So I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty skeptical the show was gonna be good at all after seeing the trailer footage with Cooper and Max dropping down in his power armor when they're in Philly. That just I remember watching that and just thinking, oh, dude, this is gonna be crap. Like, geez, that looks terrible. And to be fair, that scene still plays out the same exact way, and it still does not look great. But the fight that happens between the two afterwards, it's pretty good. So I was expecting it to be terrible and full of woke crap and stuff, just stuff that you see nowadays in shows constantly. And I can say that after finishing the season that I was pleasantly surprised that it turned out to be really good. Now, if you haven't watched it yet, here's gonna be my non-spoiler take before I get into the Meatus review, so that way you can just watch it and then come back later after you're done with the show. I would say the show's a 7 out of 10. The characters are well written, the pacing is pretty good in the show. I never felt bored with any of the episodes or any of the scenes. The set pieces look good, the CGI looks good when it's done. They did capture the Fallout vibe. There are some holes in the story towards the end, especially towards the end, that definitely shouldn't have been addressed. But overall, it didn't stop me from enjoying the show. I still recommend it. So I do suggest that you stop watching this and you go watch the show and come back afterwards. For the rest of the review, I'm going to break it down to a few different parts. We're going to start with the story, then we're going to go over the characters, we're going to go over the locations, and then the creatures. So, if you're still around, let's get into the story. So, I'm going to be going over some major spoilers for the story. I'm not going to go line by line, but I'm going to pretty much explain the whole plot through all 8 episodes and a good 10 minutes or so. I do suggest watching the show even after I go over the stories, the dialogue, and the scenes and such. They're all great and definitely are going to be nowhere near as good as me explaining them. I definitely suggest watching it regardless. So the show starts in 2077 with Cooper. He's been doing cowboy routines for kids' birthday parties. It's implied by some of the comments from the dads that he's down on his luck, forced to pay alimony, which means he got divorced at some point. It's actually never explained in the show that he got divorced, but as you get towards the end of the show, you can kind of make up your own reasons why he got divorced once he finds out certain information. He's in the process of cleaning up and such when the nukes actually hit LA, and he ends up grabbing his daughter and riding off on a horse. As he's riding off, you see more and more nukes hitting LA, and just all hell breaks loose. From that point, though, the show just jumps to 2296 in Southern California, where we're introduced to Lucy, who's a resident of Vault 33. In this vault, in this story, she's set to marry a man from Vault 32. Vault 31, 32, and 33 are all connected is pretty much one vault, like a trifecta vault. And pretty much every so often, I don't remember it saying exactly, someone from Vault 33 marries someone from Vault 32 and such. That way they can keep the bloodlines going. All was going well actually with the marriage or with the wedding, and things seemed to be fine until it turns out that the people from Vault 32 are actually raiders and they attack. Lucy actually getting attacked by her husband, who's a raider, ends up stabbing her. She ends up being able to fight him off, hitting him across the face with a broken blender. It's actually a pretty cool scene. And then she ends up running out and helping the rest of the vault dwellers defend themselves from the raiders. Her dad ends up getting kidnapped, and the raiders end up blowing up the entrance to Vault 32, or Vault 33, I should say. The scene is pretty bloody, like, that does not shy away from the violence that you would expect from a Fallout game, right? Like, at one point, one of the raiders takes some Jet before he gets ready to attack Chet, who's the gatekeeper, and then ends up falling and getting cut in half by the door. Just blood splatter everywhere. One of the vault dwellers gets a fork stuck in her eye and ends up shooting a bunch of people with a gun. It's just very good old-fashioned bloodlust, and really enjoyed it. I would say the only thing about that scene that really turned me off was the implied incest that's going on. So it's implied that Chet, who's the gatekeeper, like I said, and Lucy are cousins, and they used to fool around, if you catch my drift. And at one point, Chet is not wanting to open the door because he doesn't want Lucy to marry this random person from Vault 32 because he's in love with her. And while I'm not necessarily shocked that there was going to be some incest in the vaults, the fact that it was just so in your face and played off as a casual joke, and ha ha ha, like, I don't know, just the joke didn't land with me. I was just kind of like, that's fucking gross. Like, ugh. Like, I don't know, just me personally, just it didn't hit with me. And I mean, if others weren't bothered by it, so be it. I didn't find the joke funny. I thought it was gross. But besides that, the scene was great, and the whole fighting going on between the Raiders and the Vault Dwellers was really good, and I definitely enjoyed it. After the fighting's done and they've locked up the Raiders, no one wants to go after Hank. They're all just like, whatever, we're just gonna pretty much forget him. Lucy isn't gonna let this slide, so she is able to escape the vault with the help of Chet and Norm. And the story ends up switching to Maximus at that point. He's a recruit from the Brotherhood of Steel. He's not well liked with others. They are beating the shit out of him when you first see it. He does befriend another recruit named Dane, and Dane ends up being promoted at one point to Squire and to set the travel with the Knights until she's injured by razor blades placed in her boots. I will take this moment to state the elephant in the room. Dane is apparently going by non-binary, and the elders in the Brotherhood still actually refer to her as they. In terms of the show being woke, as others were stating or planning on was going to be, this is about as woke as it gets, surprisingly. This really is not that big of a deal, in my opinion, because I still think Dane was a good written character and enjoyed the scenes that she's in. And if you're going to try to cancel me because I keep calling her she, I don't really give a shit. So Max is suspected of doing this, though, but he ends up being cleared, and then he gets promoted to Squire. So he's going to be sent into the wilds to search for a target. The target in this case is an Enclave defector. There's a little bit of scenes with him training dogs and such. Ends up stealing some tech by putting it into his neck. And according to everyone, it's going to be able to change the world. So whoever possesses it controls the wastelands. So naturally, Brotherhood still wants it because that's their thing, right? They're always trying to take technology and keep it for themselves. And pretty much it. So the story revolves around the Brotherhood still, at least from their section of the story, they're wanting this target and they want to get this weapon from him. At this point, we switch to a graveyard with some bandits. They're digging up a grave, which just happens to have Cooper, who's the ghoul in the story. They explain there's a big bounty and such. Cooper talks some shit to them. They talk some shit back to him, pretty much saying they could leave his ass in the grave. Cooper ends up killing them all, no problem, and goes on his merry way. At this point, we go back to Maximus getting branded by his knight Titus, and explaining the story, or explaining his mission. They end up taking off, heading towards the city of Philly. Halfway there, the knight decides that now we're gonna stop here and travel on foot in the wilds. They're going through some caves with radioactive material. The knight treats Max like shit. Just point that out there. In the games, I don't really remember if the knights were really shitty to their squires. I don't remember in Fallout 4 that happening, but in the show, the knights treat them like shit. So he's pretty much telling Max that he needs to go figure out what that monstrous sound is going on in the caves. As Max is looking through, really what ends up happening is one of the radioactive bears, Yao Gawi, I think that's how it's pronounced. I've never really understood how to pronounce the name of those bears. Ends up showing up behind the knight and end up fucking his ass up pretty good. Max is able actually to save the knight by shooting the bear in the head with a one shot, which I will state was kind of unbelievable because those things are not fun to fight in Fallout 4. I don't know if shooting it once in the head ever kills it with anything. So the fact that Max was able to kill it with a one shot with a 10mm pistol, it's kind of unbelievable, but so be it. At this point, the knight takes off his armor, or takes off his helmet, and you can tell he's really fucked up from it. He's bleeding, but he's still being a dick to Max at this point. He's pretty much just telling him that, why didn't you help me? And he's fucking stupid, blah blah blah. The Brotherhood of Steel is gonna kill him for this. Max is pretty much like, fuck you, dude, and decides that he's gonna let him bleed out and take his armor, which I don't blame him. If I was Max, I would have done the same thing because screw that. At this point, all three characters end up meeting in Philly. Lucy does meet the target at one point at night. She's got a fire going on, and she's kind of do like a camp out, and really she wakes up to this dude just staring at her with a dog The dog ends up killing this rad roach, and the defector is from the Enclave is telling her, like, you just need to go back home. Like, you're not gonna survive out here. Like, you just have no way of doing it. They go the separate ways, and then they finally end up all meeting back up in Philly. So Lucy ends up going to the shopkeeper, talking about trying to figure out a way to get to the raiders that stole her dad. The shopkeeper pretty much tells her to kick rocks. At that which point, the defector shows up, and Lucy figures out that the shopkeeper is actually going to be helping the defector get to the same raiders that she is trying to find. They end up going outside, and that's where Cooper shows up, and he's been paid a bounty, or he's trying to collect a bounty on the defector. He shows up, he ends up blowing the foot off the defector. It's a pretty cool, gruesome scene. Everyone ends up trying to kill Cooper in town. He just mops the floor with them all. A really, really cool gunfight. And pretty much at that point, Lucy runs into the shop, looks through the book so she can figure out who the actual target is. That's where she learns the name of the raider. And then as she heads back out, that's when she has that scene from the trailer where she's talking to Cooper and being like, I'd rather you not try to do violence, but I will have to be forced to act violently back. And Cooper's just like, what the fuck ever, and getting ready to blow her away. And that's when Max shows up in the power armor, and they have that fight. At which point, during the fight with Cooper and Max, Lucy is told by the shopkeeper that if she wants to get her dad back, to take the defector to the raider, she can trade him for her father. So they slip out the back. They put this metal leg thing on the defector. It's pretty gruesome the way it works, but he's hobbling out of the back. At some point, it looks like maybe Max might get the upper hand on Cooper, but ends up getting stuck inside one of the wooden planks when he was stepping. So, Cooper fucks with him because he was in the military. Ends up messing up his armor, and while he's trying to fly away, he messes up his targeting system with the hook, and Max goes flying into some mud. At that point, Cooper decides he's going to go figure out where they went. He actually, at some point, the defector's dog tried to attack him, and he ended up stabbing him. He didn't kill him. He ended up saving his life. Don't worry, the dog's still alive. But at that point, Lucy and the defector are already on their way out, and so now it's up to Cooper to try to lead them on their way. They get out of Philly. They get over to it looks like this an old Soviet satellite that crashed. At that point, the defector tells Lucy that he's taking a cyanide pill. He wasn't gonna make it anyways, and pretty much gives her a ripper. Tells her she needs to take his head to the raider. Lucy, of course, first doesn't want to do it because she's not violent, but the ending of the episode goes black and you hear the sound of the ripper. So pretty much she cut his head off. It didn't need to show, but I think it would have been kind of cool if they did show that scene, show just sort of her facial expression and stuff while she's cutting this dude's head off. I think that would have been kind of funny to see, but pretty much that's where that episode ends. At this point, Max's armor's destroyed, or it's damaged, so he has to take it off and get a part repaired. So he goes back into Philly, which now is kind of business as usual since Cooper's not around to start shooting everyone. He ends up getting a piece fixed that he needed to, but when he goes back, there's a bunch of raiders at the armor. He tries to fight them, and he gets the shit kicked out of him. He holds his own for a little bit, but he gets the absolute shit kicked out of him. And so he's out cold for about a minute or two while the raiders are trying to get his power armor going. He ends up grabbing a metal pole and beating the shit out of a few of them with it, but then they get him again and start kicking the shit out of him. But he's able to reach his hand into the armor, to the arm section of the power armor, and actually grabs one of the raiders' head and crushes it just like that. It was a really cool bloody scene, just crushes it. The other raider who's actually punching him runs and screams in terror. But at this point, the Brotherhood is bringing their Squire because before Max had actually wanted to go get the power armor fixed, he had actually checked in because he could hear them calling over the radio, and he tried to play it off as he was Titus, and and he didn't need a squire, but they said they were sending one. So that's where Thaddeus comes in, or Thaddeus. I'm not sure. I think it's how you pronounce it. He's actually one of the squires used to beat the shit out of him in the recruit area. So he ends up getting in the armor and kind of just fucking with Thaddeus and making him do shit, kind of just treating him like his little bitch. But just funny for some parts. At one point, he makes Thaddeus climb up a tree, an apple tree, knowing damn well there's no apples there. Thaddeus actually ends up falling out of the tree. He just kind of fucks with him. It's some pretty cool scenes, kind of funny. You see him get a little bit of revenge back. Then we skip back to Lucy as she's walking through the wilds, and she comes up to this river and actually sees a deer, and the deer actually ends up getting taken by a creature in the water, and this creature tries to get a hold of Lucy. She ends up dropping the head, and then the creature ends up taking the head. So at this point, Lucy's trying to go ahead and get the head back from this creature, and then that's where she runs into Cooper, who Cooper pistol whips her, knocks her ass out. At this point, Cooper is, pissed off, of course, right? He wants the head because he wants the bounty, and Lucy, saying pretty much got lost. Cooper sees the gulper eggs and realizes, oh, what, took the egg or took the head. So he ends up using Lucy as bait by hanging her in the water as like a fishing lure. At this point, she's definitely getting hit with a bunch of rads. The gulper ends up getting a hold of them both. Lucy actually ends up taking Cooper's bag to beat the gulper with, so she'll let go of her. And the turn ends up smashing his vials. Now, one thing this show does that was never done, ever explained, or even a thing in other like the Fallout games is apparently these vials keep the ghouls from going feral. I don't know how much I feel about this so far. Like, it's like one hand, like, okay, it kind of makes logical sense. Like, you have to, our brains want to know what keeps a ghoul from going feral or going feral in general, because radiation heals them, right? But they don't explain what this vial is. It's kind of this magic, like magic powder or magic liquid with no explanation on how it works. But the bottles they had left end up getting destroyed in the fight between the Gulper and Lucy and them. This, of course, pisses him off, so now he decides he's going to take Lucy with him. At this point, Max and Thaddeus end up following the trail and getting to the same water where Lucy and Cooper were. They end up, Thaddeus is actually using his radiation tractor and ends up going into the water where the Gulper attacks and actually tries to eat Max in the power armor, but then Thaddeus ends up shooting it in the face with this hook, at which point it goes after him and actually tries to swallow him. And it's kind of funny because Max has to try to pull Thaddeus out of its mouth, and they end up killing it, but I'm not really sure how they killed it. Like, Max kind of like pushed the hook a little bit with his hand, but really the hook wasn't really in his throat or anything. It was just on the side of his mouth. The Gulper ends up just puking up a bunch of shit and pulling and puking up Thaddeus out of his mouth. And that's where they end up finding the head. So at this point, now Max and Thaddeus have the head. Fast forward to with Lucy and Cooper. Cooper is sending his way, walking through the desert, walking through the wastelands. They end up coming across the ghoul that he knows. The ghoul is going feral. He kind of distracts him with some old stories and shooting him. And then explains to Lucy that without the vials, they do go feral. And then that leads us to where Cooper is going to trade Lucy for vials. He ends up taking to a super duper mart, where it ends up turning out that they harvest organs. Now, Cooper ends up passing out from lack of vials and is passed out by super mart. Lucy ends up getting taken inside. Once inside, Mr. Handy is actually going to be the one to harvest Lucy's guts. Lucy's able to actually disarm it and fill its gun or its needle gun, syringe gun, with cleaner, which actually would be very harmful and acid for people. She was able to find the two guys that are actually running the business and force them to open up the freezers that are holding other ghouls. They do so just fine, but there's three other freezers that weren't open. And they're trying to be like, you don't want us to do that. She's like, I admit. She shoots a syringe at one of them, missed on purpose, but they get a point across. So they end up opening up the freezer and coming out 3 feral ghouls. And at that point, they rush at them, attacking the dudes, ripping their guts out. Everyone's dead in the process, right? Except Lucy. Amazing scene, by the way. They did a really good job with the feral ghouls. Extremely bloody. One feral ghoul that jumps over and gets the guy. You can see him ripping his chest right out. It's just great Fallout content, right? And so Lucy's just like, holy shit, like what the fuck? And then there's one more ghoul that comes out, and like the ghoul before they met, when she was with Cooper, she sent people feral, and ends up Lucy has to end up putting her down, unfortunately, because she does go feral and does an attack. And it's just another kind of scene where it's like, Lucy's, naive and just doesn't really fully understand the world, and she's just learning these lessons the hard way, unfortunately. But she ends up grabbing a bunch of the vials and giving it to Cooper. He's sitting there laying on the ground, fucked up, and she's just like, I'm never gonna be you. And then she goes on her way. At this point, Thaddeus and Max are, having a good heart-to-heart moment. He ends up branding Thaddeus, but he ends up trying to trust Thaddeus and shows that he's really not Knight Titus. At that point, Thaddeus is like, no, like I'm gonna go tell. And Max tries to actually kill Thaddeus with the power armor. He ends up crushing his foot, but Thaddeus is able to get around and pull out the fusion core. It ends up locking Max in his power armor for a few hours. At least, that scene takes place at night. By the time Lucy ends up finding Max, it's daylight. The scene's actually pretty cool. There's a bunch of rad roaches that come up and they start trying to tear apart the power armor with him in it, and Lucy saves him by shooting all the rad roaches. At the point, she is actually really skeptical about Max. She does learn that he was the dude in the power armor that saved her or stopped Cooper during the Battle of Philly, but she's very, very cautious because, as she states, everyone up here is trying to kill her so far as she's trusted. But at this point, she's radiation sickness and she's trying to throw up, so she does end up letting Max out because Max has some rat away. She ends up passing out, and Max gives her the rat away, and then she wakes up. At this point, discovered that they're both looking for the head. She brokers a deal with Max that if they get the head back and they give it to the Brotherhood, she would do that if the Brotherhood would help her get her dad back from the Raiders. So, they go on their way and such. Pretty good scene. I really did like the chemistry between Max and Lucy on these scenes. At one point, they're going across the bridge, and Lucy wants to try to trust these people across the bridge and wants to, hands up. They actually try to be fiends and try to shoot them. Max ends up killing them both with Lucy's pistol, but he does get shot. At this point, eventually through the walking, Lucy and Max stumble on the ruins of Shady Shores. Max tells her how he's from there and how it was blowing up. And at this point, Max is starting to feel the effects of the gunshot wound. So him and Lucy are looking for a hospital or medical center to get first aid. They end up finding one, but when they go through the door, it actually ends up being a trap, and they end up getting trapped in Vault 4. It all seems, well, at first, Max is very cautious with them, but Lucy's just like, oh, this is great, they're fine, everyone's so nice, blah, blah, blah. Then they start to realize that everyone in the vault is not like a super mutant, but a mutant. They're different things wrong. And some got gills, some have a nose on their forehead. Everyone there is not okay. The overseer has one eye in the middle of his fucking head. It's kind of funny, those scenes, but they just realize that everything is not right. At one point, they have a ceremony going on, and that's when Lucy shows up and realizes everyone's getting naked, everyone's worshiping this weird god, and that's when they pull out the banner, and she realizes that they're worshiping the Raider that she's trying to get to. She's just like, nah, I'm good. I'm so out of here. And right before this, Max was actually trying to steal the fusion core from the base because they actually brought his power armor to the base for him. He was missing a fusion core, right? So he wanted to steal the fusion core from the base so he could put it into his power armor. she's not the overseer, but she's a big wig in the base in the vault, is able to convince him to take a hot shower, enjoy some actual food. At that point, Max is like, okay, whatever. He ends up totally being in love with it. So he refused to help Lucy kind of figure out what's going on. So when they first joined the vault, they were told they could not go to level 12. Lucy decided she's gonna go check out level 12, right? Why not? This place is already weird as it is. Max is like, nah, I'm good. I'm gonna stay here and enjoy this food and this hot shower and robe. So Lucy ends up going to level 12, where she discovers like the crazy science experiment that's always in every vault, right? There's always something, because that's all Vault-Tec was about. Really what she discovers is that it looks like they made the Gulpers there. There's this holotape. It's weird, like they had a human woman birth the Gulpers into a tank, and then the Gulpers end up eating her in the tank. And at this point, she's like freaked out, right? As she should be. So she tries to go into another room where she discovers more of these pregnant women in cryo tanks. And at that point, that's where one of the vault dwellers that she saw earlier is there, trying to check on the ladies. Rightfully so, she thinks that they're in on it. She tries to escape, but gets caught. She ends up beating a few of them down, but eventually she gets caught. At this point, she's taken to an interrogation room with the overseer, and then that same lady who stopped Max from stealing the fusion core originally. And they actually explained to them that the original scientists in the vault died. They're the ones that created the Gulpers, and they kept this vault open. The people that ended up finding it from Shiny Shores kept the vault open to keep people safe because of these things like that, and explained to her that Vault-Tec is evil and stuff like that. And at that point, Lucy's like, okay, I'm sorry, and they tell her, oh well, no, you're banished. So what's funny is they actually take her to the same area, like the middle where they had the ritual, and it seems like they're gonna try to execute her, but really they're like, your punishment is you're banished. And while you're banished, you get 2 weeks worth of supplies, and of course someone will carry this to the service for you. It's just like kind of like this hilarious, like really you're supposed to be like a bad thing and being banished, but really she wanted to leave in the first place. And then on top of that, they're like giving her a bunch of shit. Problem is that Max saw them like taking her blindfolded and all this stuff, so he ends up stealing the fusion core, throwing in his suit, jumping down there, kicking the shit out of a few of the people in the vault, before being stopped by Lucy and being like, no, they're letting us go. So he's just like, fuck, right? Okay. They end up getting removed out of the vault, right? But Lucy convinces Max to give him back their fusion core, so he does. At this point, we kind of go back to Cooper, right? So Cooper goes back to the Super Duper Mart where he's sitting there and he's taking a bunch of vials, he's taking a bunch of that stuff, and ends up seeing one of his old movies because he's a movie star, right? And I've kind of glossed over his flashback scenes in this review so far. Really, those I feel like are best left to you to watch yourself. That were just better that way. The flashbacks the story plays out pretty much that for when it comes to Cooper is that you have the present day Cooper, he's the ghoul bounty hunter, and then he has these flashbacks that help explain the story up until before the war happened. He comes back from his flashback, and that's when 3 dudes show up and are pretty much blaming him for this legitimate business. They call it legitimate business being destroyed. So they knock his ass out, and they end up taking him to their boss, this dude named Booker that Cooper actually knows. So at this point, they're pretty much going to execute Cooper. Cooper kind of riles up one of the sheriffs because he talks about how he had blown up, or he shot a bunch of people in Philly, and the sheriff is like, oh, my brother's in Philly. And Cooper's baiting him and is like, well, either your brother is dead or he's a coward. And so at that point, they are getting ready to take him out back and feed him to the hogs, as they say. And Cooper ends up killing the 3 sheriffs. He doesn't kill Booker, at least doesn't show it on camera. And at this point, this is where we find the name of the raider, as Cooper sees a poster of her on the wall and pulls it off, and he asks Booker, like, why do you have her poster? And that's where Booker's like, well, Daver, like, and then explains who she is. Truth is that Booker knows her from before the war and such. So that's pretty much where we end right there with Cooper at the time. We end up getting clipped later on with Cooper. He actually ends up picking up a note off one of the sheriffs to learn more about Moldover and that group. So ends up going to a house a man named Adam, where he explains that he got one of the letters that he killed. Ends up being the guy's oldest son. At that point, Adam explains that his son actually had ran off with that mad woman, as he calls her, 2 years ago and such. But because the letter had been addressed to Tommy, the middle son that's there, Cooper just wanting to get some information on him. Tommy ends up telling him that they are at the observatory. At that point, it's implied, or Cooper implies, that he had killed his oldest son. And he's asking Tommy, are you going to come after me today or someday in the future? And at that point, Tommy tries to pull a gun to kill Cooper. Cooper lays him out, just straight up blows him away, and goes on with his merry day. I do want to kind of point out that things like this, like Cooper, definitely, he just feels like the most Fallout, like the most old Fallout, I should say, like Fallout 1, 2, New Vegas. Cooper definitely feels like that in terms of vibes, like where the other characters, like a lot of the show feels like Bethesda tier Fallout. Cooper definitely feels more of like Obsidian and Black Isle Studio and stuff like that. We end up returning back to Max and Lucy as they're on their trail to find Thaddeus. Thaddeus actually ends up running into a snake oil salesman, as we'll call him, saying he could fix his foot. He ends up taking this mysterious oil, and it actually does fix his foot. It restores it all the way back. I mean, his foot was fucked up, hardcore fucked up, and now it's returned back to normal. So he ends up reaching a radio station where he's able to contact the Brother of Steel. At this point, Lucy and Max ends up catching up to him. He tries to shoot at him and misses all his shots. He's a terrible shot. What's funny is when he's actually stepping back, the lander on the radio station is actually booby-trapped because a lot of people will try to come and kill the radio host. Thaddeus actually ends up standing on or activating a trap. It's an arrow stuck through his neck. He's freaking out, right? But he pulls it right out and then heals right away. At this point, they're like, we're pretty sure you're a ghoul now. And he can't be in the Brotherhood still if he's a ghoul, right? So now the Brotherhood are showing up at this point. Max tells Thaddeus, give me the head, just take off running, and don't worry, I'll take care of it, I'll deal with him. Max then gives the head to Lucy and tells her to go and find the Raiders, right? He'll go ahead and give the Brother Steel a fake head, and hopefully it will pass and such. So we see Max get back to the Brotherhood of Steel headquarters. At this case, they've taken over the city of Philly, and he tries to present the head to them. They realize it's fake, and they threaten to kill him. It's at this point that Dane actually begs for him to be spared, and also confesses that she's the one who actually put the razor blades in her boots because she was scared to actually go into the wild. Max is able at that point to convince the Elder that he can lead them to the head. At the next point of the scene, Max tells the Elder that Knight Titus actually died running, and the Elder at this point talks about how the Brotherhood has lost their way, and he wants to build a new Brotherhood with Max. Lucy ends up reaching the observatory, and where she's able to confront Mulder. From here, she actually learns the truth about her dad. So there's like the big revealing plot point. Hank is really from the past. He's part of Vault-Tec. Him and a bunch of the Vault-Tec employees actually hid in Vault 31. This is a big cryo station, right? At this point, I did kind of leave out some parts of the story. Norm, Lucy's brother, has actually been the whole time trying to figure out everything about the vault. He went through Vault 32 and realized everyone was already killed violently, right? He was able to end up breaking into Vault 31, pretending to be the overseer, and actually learns and finds all of the cryopods himself. he actually ends up having to apply. That applies, at least he has to go into his dad's cryo chamber because the vault won't let him out. Back here with Lucy and her dad and the Raiders, she learns that her dad is the one that actually blew up Shady Shores, and he tries to give her some spill reason, blah, blah, blah. Really, what happens is he blew it up. Her mom ends up becoming a ghoul. Her mom's sitting at the table. She looks terrible. All the dirty secrets come out. They are able to convince her dad to give them the access codes so they can start the cold fusion process, which was the thing that was lodged in the defector's neck. So at this point, they're able to start the process. As the process is starting, the brother still shows up to attack them. There's a huge battle that goes on. It's actually a really cool scene, really cool battle scene. Really well done, like really bloody. Yeah, of course the Knights are doing a pretty good job of mopping the floor with this ragtag unit, but they get some licks in and they kill some. What do you call it? Some of the Knights. One of the best scenes of this is that actually when they're attacking the base, they get into a corridor and where they're actually confronted by Cooper, who informs them that he used to wear the armor because he was a soldier. He used to wear the armor and wonders that the defect under the chest plate is still an issue, which he shoots and kills the Knight instantly doing this defect. Then he ends up blowing the lights out and proceeds to kill them all. The scene's really badass, but it does actually raise a plot hole when it comes to the battle between Max and Cooper and Philly. Like, if Cooper knew about this, why did he just one-shot Max and call it a day? Like, it never really describes in the show why. I mean, they could do a cop-out and just be like, oh, he just happened to remember at that point. But while the scene's really cool, and I'm not going to really take anything away from it, that's something I thought about after the episode was over, was that, like, if he knew that he could one-shot Knights with shooting him under the chest plate, why didn't he just do it to Max? Why did he take a beating and do all this fighting? But overall, the scene's really one of the best scenes in the show. This is a nice little gunslinging scene. At this point, they one of the Knights who's headless because he got his head shot off apparently busts through the door and falls over. Max ends up coming through the doors and sees Lucy. Lucy's still in shock after learning the truth about her dad and such. Her dad's convinced Max to shoot the gate open and let him out. He does that. He's now then talking to Lucy, trying to get her to snap out of it. Hank puts on some power armor, and Lucy's like telling at that point in time Max he can't come with us. He's the one that blew up Shady Shores, blah, blah. At that point, Max is rightfully pissed off, right? Because he was in that explosion. He tries to fight Hank, but Hank's in his power armor and pretty much knocks Max out cold. At that point, you know, Hank's like, you're coming with me, Lucy. And that's where Cooper ends up actually showing up through the door. During one of the flashbacks, it's actually shown that Hank was Cooper's wife's assistant and had actually met him. And at that point, Cooper actually shot Hank in the face, skinned his cheek. And Cooper's just like, you know, I've been waiting for 200 years to find out who the fuck knows where my family is. That's a big thing, right? He wants to know where his family is. He wants to know his wife is a big wig for Vault-Tec. He wants to know where she's at. And Hank actually ends up taking off running, and Cooper just lets him go. Lucy's actually kind of mad, like, why did you just let him go? And as Cooper had stated, it's easier to track him, see where he's going. At that point, Cooper's, you know, asking Lucy, you gonna come with me, track him down? Lucy decides that she is gonna go with Cooper. She ends up shooting her mother to kill her out of mercy, and tells Maximus, who's still knocked out, that she'll find him when she can. And then she ends up leaving with Cooper. At some point, Max ends up waking up, can't find Lucy. Mulder comes back from the battle. She's gravely wounded. She's able to actually finish the cold fusion process when she hits the button, and then actually restores power all the LA. You just see in the background LA skyline, everything's lighting up, everything's just getting power now. and she ends up actually dying there in the chair, looking at over at the city. At this point, Max is standing next to her, but they didn't really pay attention to each other. The Brotherhood ends up coming through the door, and Dane pretty much states that, oh, Max is a hero, and everyone's hailing Max as a knight. Max at first kind of tries to be like, I didn't kill her, but he just kind of lets it go on, and he's hailed a hero. And pretty much where the show ends, the final scene is Hank actually walking through the desert and right at the edge, looking over all of New Vegas, and then that's where the show leaves off. My real big issue I had with the ending of the show is that one thing is that when the people inside the observatory are running out to face the Brother of Steel, there's a sign actually above the door that says NCR headquarters. So this would imply that this is all that's left of the NCR. And at no time in the show did they really discuss what happened to them, right? The NCR has a population of 700,000 people, at least in 2281 or so, when New Vegas is taking place. They're a major faction. They pretty much control not maybe all of California, but at least 2/3 of it. And it's just like what happened? How did they fall? How did they really fall like this, right? This, I feel like a really big oversight on the writer's part. Granted, there are some Easter eggs in the credits of the last episode. They show a lot of down NCR planes. They show outposts and stuff like that on fire. And this is all taking place in New Vegas, right? So hopefully, come season 2, they explain it. My theory is going to be for this, at least season 2, is that Mr. House got the platinum chip. He destroyed the NCR, probably Caesar's Legion as well. A mixture of the destruction in the desert and Sandy Shores that could have been the downfall of them. The show does take place 14 years after the Battle of Hoover Dam. So there's a possibility. But I still kind of find it hard that a faction like the NCR, being that size, could be destroyed even in this time span of 10 or 14 years. So I am hoping that maybe the NCR is still going strong in Northern California, where they were Bakersfield and such, because they were still up there. Another thing I feel like they should have explained a lot more was how the Brotherhood of Steel was as strong as they were in California. They had been stomped out really bad by the NCR, and even in 2281 they were still getting destroyed, and they were pretty much in hiding. Now the Brotherhood of Steel on the East Coast was strong, because we've seen them in Fallout 4, and that takes place in 2287. That's a good 6 or 7 years after New Vegas. And I'm not necessarily saying it's impossible for the NCR to fall and the Brotherhood of Steel to regain power. It's just those are some major fucking events that were never explained. But to be fair, overall, I still enjoyed the show, and I'm really still looking forward to the second season. I didn't let this necessarily dwell on me and maybe to the point where I didn't want to watch the show anymore or never watch it again. It was just after I finished the season up, I just started thinking about it and kind of going back and looking at some time periods, and I was just wait, hold on, there's some very missing things here that were not explained, and I'm just hoping in season 2 that they do get explained. So the next part of this review, we're going to go over the characters and my thoughts on them and such. We have Lucy. She's listed the main character. I find Lucy, she's very charming and naive. I feel like she's very capable of defending herself. She's not overpowered. I did like her innocence and a gullible personality. It was nice to see her still try to keep her best and keep her morals and principles, even being in the savage world of the Wasteland. It was nice to see her actually have to use her wits to fight, and she wasn't just a girl boss that you see in so many shows these days, just overpowers people like nothing. No, she gets the shit kicked out of her a lot and actually struggles, and it felt more real, and I was really happy to see that. The only thing certain things that really bothered me or weird was her incest comments. It was just she's just so casual about it, as if she's asking for a coffee. That felt really fucking weird. But besides that, overall, I did like Lucy. Thought she was a really good character. Then we have Maximus, kid from Shady Shores who stayed with the Brotherhood of Steel. At first, I thought he was gonna be really bland. The first episode, it was just kind of I was like, oh man, please don't tell me this dude is gonna be like Finn from Star Wars. But he actually really, really grew on me. It just, especially right after her episode 2, I believe it is, where he gets a power armor, like he starts to really shine and it starts to be funny. He's charming, reserved. Like he wants to do the right thing. He seems like things don't always seem to go right for him. But I did like the chemistry between him and Lucy, and overall, I'm interested to see what they do with him the next season. Right now that he's been hailed as a hero for that battle with the Brotherhood of Steel, let's see if he becomes a real knight. Cooper was the best character in the show, in my opinion. I did like that we get to see this charming Hollywood actor from the past and his flashbacks. He wants to keep his family safe. He's divided between, his friends wanting to help him see the truth about Vault-Tec, and then also he's married to a woman who works for Vault-Tec, right? He's like, he wants to trust his wife. He wants to trust that everything is good, and she's not a bad person, right? And he's torn between these two worlds in a sense, and it's just that those are really good conflicts, and the writing is really good. And then we get to his present day as a character as the Ghoul, right? And the Ghoul is where it really shines. He's a bounty hunter, and he's tasked with finding the Enclave defector, but he's brutal, honest, great one-liners, great bloody shootout scenes. He's really not on anyone's side, and he makes it well known. It's just, he's so great. And then honestly, out of all the characters in the show, he feels like a character from like Fallout 1, 2, or New Vegas. Like, a lot of the show, I've said before, feels very Bethesda Fallout, and if you're a fan of the shows or the games, you'll know what I mean. Like, there's just a big tone difference between Fallouts made by Bethesda and Fallouts made by the original creators, and a lot of the show feels more like Bethesda Fallout. But with Cooper, I get a lot of vibes from like New Vegas stuff from him. So I was really, really, really happy that he was in the show and just did a great job. And I'm really excited to see season 2, especially if they are going to New Vegas. Norm at first, he seemed like he was going to be a sniveling little bitch, but he actually turned out to be interesting and capable. His hacking skills and this need to discover the truth about the vault scenes, they were amazing. He had some funny, dry humor. I ended up, liking Norm a lot more than I thought I was going to end up liking him, to be honest. And then you have Moldaver, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. At first she appears just to be like a narrator and it's like a main bad guy, but it actually turns out to be someone who ran the Hollywood Forever group in the past and appears to now run the NCR, if we're going to be honest, because they didn't give me an indication that she's not the one running the NCR. I don't hate or dislike this character. I think the actress did a good job. And overall, she's pretty interesting. I just felt that she was wasted in the sense of the show because she really is only in the first episode, right? And then the last episode. Like, we didn't really get a whole lot from her. I feel like we should have got more scenes about her. That would have made more sense. I do like that she's against Vault-Tec. It's just that it's a shame that the writers killed her off and never really explained to us how she made it to 2296, right? Because she is interacting with Cooper back when he's a human before the war, and she's not a ghoul that we know of and such. So, I mean, the Vault-Tec employees made it from cryo freeze, and she could have done that, right? I just felt like the writers should have explained that at least, right? Like, you're going to do this whole big reveal that she's from the past and who she is and blah blah blah, but you're not going to explain how she got to the future unscathed. Like, that to me is like, that was a little bit of a hole in the story. Nothing major, because like I said, they killed her off, and unless they're gonna have flashbacks of her in the second season, she's just kind of done and over with, right? She just more was like a plot point for a reason for Lucy to get to where she was, but I feel like she could have been much more. And then there's other characters in the show, but I'm not gonna go into every single character because a lot of the other characters are just, they're there. They have great moments, but I feel like you'll come to know them if you watch the show. As far as like the environment and the CGI and such, I feel like the sets were done pretty well. They felt like fall locations. I mean, they're not amazing as like Lord of the Rings sets, but they did what they could without making everything a CGI backdrop like Marvel movies. The vaults, they look and feel like they do in the games. Vault 33 was really nice. You know, control vault, all the food, medical equipment, posters, colors on the walls, like the lookout the rooms and the layouts. They all were very accurate to vaults in the other games. I did like the cornfield backdrop area where the wedding took place and other meetings. That was a nice little touch. For Vault 32, when Norm was exploring it with Chet, and it was like this completely bloody and all the skeletons and stuff like that felt like those horror vaults that you come across in the game that, you know, always come across, like experiments gone wrong and stuff like that. Those were some really good scenes. And then it was I did like the flashbacks when they had cleaned up Vault 32 and they were gonna move people in, and you have Norm going through and just flashback to like the horror sections of the vault he saw when before they cleaned it up. Was really great. And then, you know, Vault 31, it's just a cryo chamber, but it looked really well. I mean, it looked all CGI, but the CGI looked well. Nothing really more than that. Vault 4, you know, it was a nice, you know, regular vault. Nothing too different. It looked like Vault 33 in a sense for the most part. I did like the level 12 in that vault. It did a really good job of hitting that typical creepy vault secret vibe area, you know, like you get in vaults. It's like the big reveal of the science experiment. Philly was okay set piece. The town definitely was inspired. Megaton, just a trading port full of crap picked from the wasteland. Nothing was really explored though, like nothing in terms of like they didn't really go too much detail of it except for a few scenes from episode 2 and 3. The wilds felt great, especially like the desert areas. Some of the areas by the like the lake and stuff, or like where they found the bear, were really green and foresty. Seemed a bit weird given that the place is called the wasteland and most of it doesn't have habitable plant life. But, you know, to be honest, gets to be done because of budgets. Like, I'm not really gonna hold it against them. It's, you know, still better than having a CGI backdrop. It's nice to see shows, especially like Fallout, using actual locations and using practical effects. The Super Duper Mart was done really well. It looked just straight out of the one from Fallout 3 in my opinion. Like, I got a lot of vibes from Fallout 3 when I was watching that scene. It was a little more well lit than the games presented, but it still felt real. You know, the red rocket, even though we only saw it from the outside, was a very well done, very detailed. Made me think of the one from Fallout 4 right outside of Sanctuary. The Brotherhood's base, though, that was kind of bland. Nothing special about it, in my opinion. It was just kind of whatever. The observatory, honestly, supposed to be the NCR's headquarters. Looked like a fucking settlement from Fallout 4. Like, it looked kind of trash. But the back shot of ruined LA City line on the outside of it when you're looking over it, that was really cool. I really liked that. And then your ending shot of New Vegas was okay at best. Like, I feel like, even though it was like literally like a 2 or 3 second scene, like I feel like they could have spent more time on the CGI. Like, I have drawings from the New Vegas Collector's Player's Guide down, and they're way more detailed. I feel like they could have done a little bit better job. I'm hoping that when the second season comes out, that they really capture the beauty of New Vegas and such. But overall, like I said, like the most of the set pieces and areas in the show look really well done. Honestly, when it comes to the creatures, I felt the show was lacking, in my opinion. You know, you have some pretty cool creatures. You have the bears, you have the gulper, and you have rad scorpions and some feral ghouls. But I was, like, a lot of time when they were traveling to the desert, I was expecting some rad scorpions. Like, we didn't get any rad scorpions. We didn't get any death claws. I was just like, whoa, come on, dude. Where's the mole rats? Like, how come we ain't getting any of those creatures in here? The creatures that we did see were really good, though. You know, the Yao Gawi, I think that's how you pronounce it. That bear fight was good. It looked great. The feral ghouls in episode 4 looked really good, especially the scene with them attacking the people, jumping across the screen, the screams, the violence, that all looked great. The Gulper was pretty interesting, but honestly, I think the design from Fallout 4 was a lot better. But it was still like a fun scene when Maximus is pulling Thaddeus out of him, using like the fingers instead of teeth. That I don't understand what that was about, but I really do hope we do see some Death Claws and Rad Scorpions in season 2. It's at least teased because at the end of the episode of episode 8, when Hank's walking, there is a Deathclaw skull there. So I'm assuming we're going to see some Deathclaws. Like, we got to go to the Quarry Junction, right? Got to see some Deathclaws there. But, overall, the creatures that we did see were really done well. The Rad Scorpion, or the Rad Roaches, even though they were CGI, they looked really good and creepy and such. So my only complaint really in that section of the creatures is that we just didn't see a whole lot of them. And my overall rating of the show is I give it a 7 out of 10. It's entertaining. I never found myself bored with any of the scenes. The characters were all well written for the most part. The set pieces were nice, and the CGI looked good. My only real big complaints were this, what happened in NCR? Why do they seem to really not exist at all? How come the Brotherhood of Steel is so strong? Some of those plot points, in my opinion, were pretty big. But the overall show was great, and I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt that season 2 will explain that. So I would love to hear your guys' opinion. Did you like the show? Did you hate it? Why did you like it? Why did you hate it? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear about it. Until next time, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. Have a good one.